Utah basketball is less than a week into their coaching search, but if the latest reports are to be believed, they already have a favorite that they have their eyes on to be the next man in charge of the Runnin' Utes. And we're talking about who that could potentially be and other reports on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first view and listen of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time listening to this show, make sure you like and subscribe. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Ryan McDonald of the Deseret News. We're talking all things Utah men's basketball coaching search, but first, want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Ryan, the coaching search is less than a week into its birth, basically, but there is already, if recent reports are to be believed, a leading candidate involved in this. Alex Markham was on the show last week and saying, hey, the Utah Boosters dream scenarios. What he said on Locked On Utes on Friday's show, you guys want to go back and watch it. He said their dream scenario is Alex Jensen, head coach, Andre Miller, assistant coach. That's what they want. So is that what they're going to get? Well, it's trending in a positive direction, Ryan, at least based on the most recent reports. Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com, you can head over and read his piece where he spoke on what's going on with Alex Jensen. And he said that Jensen has been considered the top target since the process began. And he said there's been a lot of communication between the two sides, and including a meeting in Los Angeles on Tuesday. He also said that the candidate, that Miller is another guy who seems to be open to joining and being an assistant. And once again, like the meeting in Los Angeles went so well, this is what Bartle said. It seems to be trending in a direction Utah fans would hope. That can only mean one thing. And you can get Alex Jensen, who's been a successful NBA assistant, was good with the Jazz, good with the Mavs, a former running Ute with Andre Miller by his side too. Jensen has been in the coaching ranks for longer, neither one the most head coaching experience. Miller, more recent head coach in the G League. But if these reports are to be believed, Ryan and Alex and Steve do a great job. I think Utah fans should be very excited about how this is trending, because it seems like Utah could very well be getting their guy sooner than we expected.
Yeah, I've heard similar things as far as Alex Jensen is concerned. Regarding that meeting in Los Angeles, the Lakers did play, or the Mavs did play at the Lakers on February 25th, and so I'm guessing that's. I hadn't heard about the meeting in Los Angeles, but if that is what occurred, that would make sense, because the Mavs were playing the Lakers.
There was decent publicity about that game. I can't remember why. Maybe a big trade or something too. But yeah, I think that was last Tuesday. Yeah.
Luka, man. Oh man, don't even get me started on that. Utes, Alex, yes. Focus. Yeah, I mean, I remember when Craig Smith was hired a few years ago, Boosters wanted a Utah alum, specifically. I mean, Alex Jensen, I think, was the target at that time. Sorry, I've got chaos in the background.
That is okay.
If viewers can hear that.
There's chaos in the world of Utah athletics right now with coaching search, so it fits the circumstance.
Boosters wanted Alex Jensen 4 years ago, and Mark Harlan went with Craig Smith, a coach with success at the collegiate level, a lot of success at the collegiate level, and so it seems like to me this time around the Boosters, for better or worse, are probably getting their way.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think more and more NBA assistants are looking at the college game and finding it potentially intriguing. Do we want to talk about TDS? I don't know if we want to talk about what team down south has done with their basketball program, but that's the route that they took, and obviously Alex has the connection of it being his alma mater and the most successful era of Utah basketball. He was he was a part of those teams. And so I don't generally love the idea of teams getting an alum to be their coach.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, I think it might work given Alex's success at the NBA level.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Alex would be a good hire for this team. I'm still going to have questions just because he's never been I shouldn't say it, was a G League head coach. That was a long time ago. Like, it's been a while since he's been a good head coach, and he hasn't been in the college game in a while either. And it is so interesting, Alex, because the reason, and it's so easy, Ryan, excuse me. So the reports were that Alex Jensen took his name out of the running in part was because he didn't want to coach college kids at the time. But for some reason now, when you do see a lot of college football coaches seem to want to get out more than ever, college basketball is doing all right adding coaches. Maybe the NIL just makes recruiting different, so maybe they're more open to it. Maybe that's why Kevin Young's here, and obviously Utah in the same scenario now. But yeah, but getting Alex Jensen, Alex Jensen knows ball. We talked about the success he had with Utah, with the Mavs too. He's very accomplished. If you could pair him, who knows what it takes to be a great basketball player at Utah, long time ago, but still knows, with Andre Miller, a legend, arguably the best player to ever play basketball at the University of Utah. You get those two together on the same staff, something that, as Steve Bartle talked about, is definitely something that's on the table. Alex spoke about it last week, that's the booster's dream. Like, if that's the way this shakes out, I said before, I didn't like the timing of when Craig Smith was let go. But if Utah basketball gets Alex Jensen as head coach, Andre Miller as the assistant coach, that will inject much needed life back into this program. Probably, if the boosters get their way too, more NIL dollars as well. So I can't see how this would, if this ends up happening, I'll be fired up. I think this would be great for Utah basketball's future.
It'll be interesting. I made a comment, and so it's interesting we're talking about Andre Miller. I made the comment to some people last Monday when this all went down, that I think Utah needs to get back into Los Angeles area high schools in terms of recruiting. Where's Andre Miller from? He's from the Los Angeles area. So that might, he can pitch. Hey, yeah, this was almost 30 years ago that I did this. Man, we're getting old. This is almost 30 years ago that I did this, but I did it, and I got to I was an NBA lottery pick. I had an incredibly successful NBA career. So I think Andre could be really good in terms of especially recruiting in Southern California. I don't know how he is as a coach, but as an assistant, great, sure. Dandy, what? Sure.
Well, it's a gamble in a way, just because, as we mentioned, there's also Steve Bartle mentioned this, and Alex Marco, or I think it was Jake Hatch actually threw his name out there last week, that Richard Pitino is another guy who could get some eyes of this. Utah already hired one New Mexico coach this offseason, so why not grab the basketball coach, former coach at Minnesota. Richard Pitino is doing great things with the Lobos. He's a really good college basketball coach. So Utah went with who they thought was the best basketball coach last time. It didn't work out with Craig Smith. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here. Do they go with Alex Jensen, who I don't think you could argue is the best college coach, but you could definitely argue is the best man for this job based on his history and coaching pedigree, just in terms of NBA success. So that's what makes this very interesting, and I'm just fascinated to see if this is what Utah can do in land. Based on Bartle's report, seems like it's trending in the right direction, but it's going to be a very interesting process to monitor. And the one thing that also makes this incredibly interesting, Ryan, is what is Utah basketball trying to be? I think there's a lot of questions because of what this team once was versus what they are now about what should be expected of this program on a year in and year out basis. And that is what we are going to be discussing in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at Roy. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players they loved. Now with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to athletes representing Utah than ever before. You can choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and get exclusive content straight from the athlete you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of Utah sports. You can download the app today from the App Store and start backing Utah athletes all in the ways they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. You can join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite player. So once again, you can head over to Roy. Locked On Utes fans, everyone wishes they could directly support Utah athletes and be part of their journey. And now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. So make sure you head over and check out everything that Roy has to offer today. Ryan McDonald, Deseret News, back with me here. Ryan, talk about the ceiling of the Utah men's basketball program. It's a very interesting thing because I do think it's also fair to say when you're talking about Utah basketball right now, like this is not just a Larry Kristoviak is a bad coach. Craig Smith's a bad coach. Like I don't think that they made mistakes. Sure. Craig Smith in particular is a very accomplished coach. Then didn't work at Utah. So you could blame it on Craig Smith, but I don't think that's smart. I think you also need to look inwards and be like, okay, why is Utah basketball struggling? I think NIL has something to do with that. There's been a lot of reports about that. And I also think obviously the atmosphere has been up and down. I've heard the curtains have been gone this year. So that's a better step in the right direction of filling it up more too. But yeah, it's just basketball's been an afterthought at Utah for a while. Football's been the better program per se. So what is a realistic expectation for Utah basketball and what do most fans, I think, realistically want? I don't think it's fair to expect this team to do what they did in the 90s, like make a Final Four run. Like that was a flash in the pan, like really fired up about it. Could you maybe get to a point where you put yourself in position for something like that? Sure. But what should Utah realistically want? They should be a team that contends and gets into the NCAA tournament every couple of years. Anytime your team goes 4 years without making the tournament, that's where I understand frustrations. But I don't feel like Utah basketball is a program that we should expect every year to make the team, to make the field. I don't view them in that way. But every couple years, like every other year, yes, I do think that's a fair expectation, even in a conference as tough as the Big 12.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, and it was interesting last Monday to see national analysts. All right, yeah.
What?
A little bit of gloves coming off, but it was out there. Anyone could have seen it. So I'm just saying what I saw. A whole lot of national analysts talked about how, by Big 12 standards, how bad of a job the Utah basketball job is right now. Compared to a WAC, the WAC, maybe it's a good job,
Okay.
But by Big 12 standards, it's not a great job right now. And I think a lot of that is because of NIL. There's been meager efforts on the NIL front within the Utah basketball program. So I do. I'll be curious to see how NIL changes. Assuming it's Alex Jensen, let's act as if Alex Jensen is the guy here for a minute, and has the job. I'm very, very curious to see what kind of booster support beyond people who were adults 30 years ago and are still alive, are still supporting the program. Another way I guess I could say it, I wonder how much the younger generation is going to support Alex Jensen in terms of the NIL efforts. Younger folks don't remember 30 years ago, when so what was it? Yeah, it was 27 years ago that they made the national championship game. People who were 30 at that time, okay, they're 57 now. They're in there. I'm wondering how the younger folks, younger potential boosters, are going to respond to Utah basketball's change. And so I guess that where I'm going with that is, what can we expect every year from Utah basketball? So much of it, I think, comes down to what they can do on the NIL front. And it'll be really interesting. I think it'll be really interesting to see what kind of NIL support they can get. Winning is going to help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it always does. But I think the biggest question to me is, are they going to be able to get a younger generation of fans? Yeah, I'm in my 30s. What kind of 30, 40-year-old people are going to contribute NIL to Utah basketball? I think that's my biggest question. That's my biggest question now. Yeah, maybe they'll get more NIL money from an older generation than they are right now, but what kind of NIL money are they going to get from people in their 30s and 40s?
What was the revenue sharing aspect of this? That makes it very interesting, right? You're going to get that 20 million now distributed across all sports. So how much of that goes to football? How much of that goes to this? That's where it also becomes interesting. Speaking of football, the boosters who are donating to football, you're also going to ask to donate to basketball. But how does that work? There's only so much money to go around. So how does these resources end up getting divvied up? That's the fascinating conversation. But Ryan, I think you're absolutely right. I think at today's age of college basketball, you're going to be successful based on what your NILs. Will you have a year in which you found the right mix of players, you got your guys in, and you made a run and reached the tournament? Yes, that's possible. If you want to be a consistently successful program, one that doesn't just make it one out every 4 years, but one that made it 3 out of 5 or 2 out of 4, like anything like that. Like that to me will come down to NIL and the quality of the players you're able to land. And there are massive questions about where Utah's NIL is at currently. There's rumors it's going to be better, and it would make sense if this is indeed a booster motivated hiring. And it seems the boosters were a large part of the push to get Craig Smith out as early as they did. There seems to be a lot of reason to think Utah's NIL will improve, and especially in the Big 12, Ryan. It has to improve, or Utah, they're not going to be overperforming at 10. If it's not where it should be, there's years they'll probably find themselves in the bottom 5 of this conference frequently if the NIL is not indeed raised.
Yeah. Listen, I know what happened with Craig Smith is what happened with Craig Smith. He's no longer in the job. I still believe he's a really, really good coach. And
Ditto.
I think the proof to me of that is this season that they were picked to finish last in the Big 12, and they're going to finish somewhere around 10th. Is that great? No, it's not great. But I think Craig Smith scratched and clawed and got everything he possibly could out of especially this year's team.
Yes.
I think that man made whatever analogy you want to use. I think he got more out of this year's team than a whole lot of coaches would have gotten out of this year's team. And so it's a business. He had almost 4 years. Like, what happened is what happened. But all that's to say, without the NIL resources, he scratched and clawed. Are they going to be able to find a coach, whether it's Alex Jensen or somebody else, who can scratch and claw? If the NIL isn't there, can they scratch and claw to being a mid-tier Big 12 team? We'll see. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. I think largely based on the fact that Alex Jensen said a few years ago that he didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I know things can change with everybody. Life changes, all that stuff. But I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah.
That he can do what Craig Smith did this season.
It's a massive question. If you give the same roster to Alex Jensen, do they do better than this? Honestly, like just next year, I'm going to say no if it's the same roster, but does Utah up their NIL? And Alex Jensen, obviously, he's a very good coach. Like he could right away be better than Craig Smith. We're not saying that, but it's really interesting what Craig Smith did this year. He didn't do enough to convince everyone he was the guy moving forward, but he did enough to scare everyone into thinking he could be the guy. You don't beat Kansas and Kansas State 2 of your last 3 games as a head coach and then get removed. if you're not in part, like this is too big of wins to get removed at this point if you're not concerned about him keeping his job. And that's what it became at Utah. Sounds like they're going with an alumni hire. Very well could be successful. It's what this program needs. I do believe that they need alumni. They need excitement back in the program, but will it be in the best interest of the actual on-court product, the best coach they can have? That only time will tell there. And it's going to be very interesting to see. While the men's basketball team they're still finishing up their season. Shout out to them for dropping 99 against Arizona State, by the way. What a game and a win that was for Utah still. No, Arizona State's not great, but still nice to beat the Sun Devils, especially after what they did to us in football. But the Utah women's basketball team continues to roll, and they did our favorite thing, beat the BYU Cougars, and it was in quite dramatic fashion, too. They wrapped up their regular season. We're going to be talking about what's ahead for them and recapping that game in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA action is heating up, and when the game tips off, the NBA has the best place to bet on the NBA is with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place a live bet throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to be part of the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Whether it's the Luka, LeBron, re-energized Lakers, or so many other of the top teams in the NBA, the New York Knicks trying to climb the standings again, the Celtics and Cavs, a fun game that was last week too. Are they going to stay atop of the East? Seems likely with the amount of games remaining too. The race in the West is heating up. I'm going to keep an eye on my Timberwolves, whichever team you're looking at, or if it's the Utah Jazz, if you want them to keep losing the tank. Head over and look over at the options at FanDuel today. Gavin, the Utah women's basketball team had one heck of a way to beat BYU. The buzzer-beating shot from Madison Wilkes, is going to be something that we do not forget a long time. She only had 5 points in the game even, but cemented herself as a Utah legend in that moment with the buzzer-beating three in overtime, 76-73. Gianna Neepkins and Maya Torre combining for over 40 points in the game too. And hey, I mean, credit for give. I mean, she had an insane game, 36, but Utah got it done. BYU stormed back in the fourth to get overtime. Utah only scored 7 in the third quarter, staying out a little flat. But hey, at the end of the day, you beat BYU, and it was in quite the memorable fashion.
It was so much fun. I wasn't at the game, but I was watching it. End of the fourth quarter. Once BYU started coming back, it was like, okay, like classic, typical BYU Utah rivalry game. Like regardless of the sport, it seems like this is close and great games pretty much every time. So yeah, toward the end of the fourth quarter, I turned it on and then into overtime, and what a shot. I mean, it was a pretty, I know that pretty much all basketball players practice those half court shots at the end of practice. And it was about as textbook as a look as you could get. It looked like she was doing it in practice, and boom, right in. Like it was awesome. It was a ton of fun.
It was incredible. And now the women's season is over. Going to be the 6th seed in the Big 12 tournament, but hats off to Gavin Peterson. Took over at the weird timing with Lynn Roberts leaving to become the LA Sparks head coach. So a wild ride. Utah ends up 13-5 in the Big 12, 22-7 overall. This is a team I'm excited. I think this Utah team has a chance to make some noise in March. Always going to be tough, but feels like there's big things ahead for the women's basketball team and could be big things ahead for the men's basketball team. We're going to continue to monitor that coaching search. Ryan, always appreciate you making the time to stop on. Let everyone know where they can find more of your work at the Deseret News app.
Yeah, I'm at deseretnews.com. Well, it's DESERET.com. You can follow me on Twitter at X, whatever we're calling it these days, at Ryan W. McDonald. And we're over there having fun. It's March, so March is a great time. We're having fun over there. So
Yes, it is. So get ready for the best time of the year for college basketball. Utah basketball won't be in it men's wise, but the women's team will be in action. Should be a lot of fun. Ryan, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking the latest in Utah athletics.